The stock manual transmission on the M2 Competition is not fantastic. What you could do about it, next on Autopilot. Welcome back to the channel. If you've seen my previous video review of my M2 Competition, you might recall that I'm not so thrilled with the feel of the OEM manual transmission. The shifter itself has long throws, it's kind of vague and rubbery feeling, and too often you can get lost in the pattern and lose track of where you are. Also with the OEM clutch pedal, the travel is way too long. There's a ton of dead space coming up from the floor before it finally engages way at the top of the travel, making it very awkward, and in the resting position it sits very, very high. I did some research and found that I'm not the only one who's been bothered by this. Of the various short shift kits that are available on the aftermarket for this car and other BMWs, the AutoSolutions kit out of Kansas City seems to be the one that gets uniformly positive reviews for being a very high quality kit. The AutoSolutions kit has been around in various iterations for years and years for previous generations of BMWs, and is also available for newer cars, newer M3, M4s, and the M2 and M2 Competition. The nice thing is that you speak to the owner who builds them and decide how you want it custom tailored to your needs and specifically what you want. The most common thing is to get about a 20 to 25% reduction in shift throw, but if you want something less, say only a 10% reduction, or you want something more like a 40% reduction in the throw, they'll do that for you, obviously with the understanding that with the more of a reduction in shift throw, you get a corresponding increase in shift effort. Also, it can be tailored for the height of the lever to either be shorter if you prefer that, or a little bit taller to be closer to the steering wheel, or just left at stock height. So many options with this piece. As for the clutch pedal, the Ultimate Clutch Pedal is another established upgrade for BMWs. It's been around for a number of years. It replaces the clutch arm and pedal itself to give you shorter clutch travel and make it more precise for a much better feel. Let's go ahead and take a look at the components. Let's start off by taking a look at the Ultimate Clutch Pedal. It's made out of billet aluminum, has self-lubricating bronze bushings, and as you can see from here, has 3 different spring mounting locations to adjust where you mount the springs, to adjust the feel, to customize it for exactly how you like it. The OEM rubber pedal pad sits on here, or you could fit an aftermarket piece if that's your preference. Overall, seems like a very quality piece, and definitely seems heavier duty and more nicely built than the OEM clutch pedal. And now we'll take a look at the AutoSolutions Ultra Short Shifter Kit. The construction is steel for the inner portion of the shift lever, which sits in here, and then the outer portion of the shift lever is high quality aluminum. This particular lever, I ended up opting for the urethane bronze front bushing upgrade to improve feel. And in terms of options, it's very customizable. You end up communicating with Ronald, the owner out of Kansas City who makes these, and in order to select the height of the lever and also the reduction in shift throw, I ended up choosing a 20% reduction in shift throw, which is, I believe, the most common. 20 to 25% reduction is the most common choice that most people seem to be happy with. I also ended up going with the standard OEM height for the shift lever. I didn't want it necessarily any shorter. I was happy with where it currently sits, so left it at OEM height. Again, seems to be very high quality piece, and I'm looking forward to having it installed so that we can improve shift feel in them too. The car is back from the shop with the pieces installed. Let's get it out on the road. And the news is good. Shifts are definitely shorter, but more important, they're firmer and more precise. It's much easier to tell where you are in the shift pattern in the gates. That rubbery, vague Fisher-Price toy-like quality is gone, thankfully. Taking off from a stop, the ultimate clutch pedal is much smoother in its engagement point. The engagement point is much closer to the floor. Much easier to tell what you're doing in terms of feeling the clutch engage. Also, because the resting position of the clutch is lower and the pedal is not as high, it's much more comfortable when you're moving your foot over to depress the clutch to shift. You're not having to lift your leg artificially high, which is what it feels like in the stock situation, in order to depress the clutch pedal. The 1 to 2 shift is still a little bit jerky, which was the issue stock, and it hasn't necessarily been improved with the change to the ultimate clutch pedal and the upgraded shifter. I don't know if that's potentially due to a clutch delay valve, which has always been a long-standing issue with BMWs and causes a little bit of delay and lack of smoothness in shifting. From what I've read online, the removal of the clutch delay valve might be a little bit more involved with this car than it has been with past BMWs. So we'll see whether or not it's something that's bothersome and something that I need to look into. So again, 1 to 2, not the smoothest, but then once you're higher in the pattern, 2nd to 3rd, 3rd to 4th, and so on, and downshifting, it feels great. Again, the stock shifting mechanism really felt disconnected from the car. It felt plastic and toy-like. Just kind of a disappointment. This feels so much better. I would almost consider it mandatory to do the ultimate clutch pedal and the short shifter together, just because they work together so synergistically to really make it a much better experience. One other issue I've noticed with this car relates to the spacing between the clutch pedal and the brake pedal. They're close enough together that unless you're really paying attention and making sure that your left foot is well clear of the brake pedal and well over to the left, it's possible to end up tapping the edge of the brake pedal with your foot when you're meaning to just depress the clutch, which obviously is not what you intend and can be a little bit awkward. Something that I don't notice in the GT4, so the spacing must be different in that car, and I'm probably used to that spacing. And I think long-term is not a problem in this car. I think once you get used to it and you pay attention to it, then it becomes second nature and it's not an issue. I elected to keep the stock height of the shifter and not go for a reduction in the shifter height, and I'm glad that I made that decision. I think if I had reduced the height, it would be awkward based on where the armrest is and where my right arm rests when doing shifting. So a very, very worthwhile upgrade. The shifts feel much more positive. Feels like you're much better connected to the car. Feels like the mechanism is smooth metal moving as opposed to a plasticky feel. So it just makes for a much, much more enjoyable driving experience, and why many of us end up electing for manual transmissions in the first place. Is it as good as the GT4s or a standard Porsche manual? No, it's not, but that in many ways I believe is the gold standard and hard to replicate even with doing aftermarket shifters. But a huge, tremendous improvement over the stock setup in this M2 Competition, and I'm very, very happy with it. I highly recommend it. To recap, the AutoSolutions short shifter kit and the ultimate clutch pedal together make a very satisfying upgrade for the M2 Competition. It took my shop about 1¼ hours of labor to get the clutch pedal installed and about 2½ hours of labor to get the short shift kit in place, which is really reasonable considering the amount of work that has to be done. Obviously, the driver's footwell area is a very tight area to be working to get that clutch pedal installed, so that's why that takes 1¼ hours. And then in terms of the short shift kit, my understanding is that in the past with other applications, sometimes shift kits can be done from above, which is quite a bit easier, but at least with this particular application, it all has to be done from below. So the car has to be up on the lift, and then quite a few things have to be temporarily removed to gain access. The exhaust has to be dropped, the heat shielding for the exhaust has to be removed, and the drive shaft actually has to be temporarily moved out of the way, and the transmission mounts to get access to get up into that shift mechanism from below. So 2½ hours, not really a ton of time considering the amount of work that goes into it. It's becoming increasingly rare these days to be able to order a new car with a manual transmission. So when you are able to do that, it's disappointing when it ends up feeling like this car's transmission does in its stock form. By doing this upgrade with the ultimate clutch pedal and the short shift kit, in this case from AutoSolutions, ends up making this feel like it should, which is positive, engaging, connected, and a much more satisfying experience. I'd be interested in hearing any of your experiences with short shift kits by AutoSolutions or other makers for the M2 and the M2 Competition, so leave comments below. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time.